Alright guys, this is a quick tutorial on how to order TB tests. I know I went through this really briefly when I stopped by to show everyone, but I feel like it'd be more reinforced if we can kind of watch a video just to help us out a little bit more. So first step is to go into orders and letters. Actually, before I get into it, I've noticed that a lot of people have been adding TB test into the new order group over here. This is not where you want to put a TB test results, and I'll show you where exactly how you should be doing it. Remember that you should only be doing new order groups over here if the patient is not in the office, okay? Obviously, if they're going to get a TB test read, they have to be in the office, and so we never want to use a new order group. You always want to tie in TB test with the encounter for which they came in, and so that's how I'll show you how you guys would do that. So if we're in the current encounter here, we would go into the intake section, which we are now. The patient's checked in already. The back staff is rooming the patient, putting all these vitals and so forth. Let's just jump ahead to orders and letters. And like all resultant interpretations, I want to do a TB test. So here it is in office results. If I check this drop down menu and move to PPD, notice that a little box will populate automatically. Now, we were told that anytime we use any of these in-office tests, that we should always check mark this, discuss this result, closed. Well, we don't have the results because the results don't come in until 48 hours. So in this sense, we wouldn't want to check this off. Another reason why we always want to check mark this on other tests, such as a UA, for example. Let's see here. Once we put in all the results, we always want to discuss this results close. This lets us close this actual task and doesn't allow it to go into an inbox anymore. So the fact that we did this, it closes the task and it no longer needs to be delegated to anybody else. But as far as for the PPD testing, we need to keep this open because we don't have the tests, we don't have the results, so we're going to leave this open. So anytime we pick one of these selections from our point of care, for instance I did the PPD, and you scroll down to the diagnoses or the assessment and plans, you'll notice that the PPD order is right over here. Okay, the UA might be here too because I picked UA. Actually it's not because I deleted it. So notice how PPD is here and it's not associated with the diagnosis. I always have to include orders with a diagnosis for insurance purposes. Okay. Another thing that you need to include is the actual solution in which we injected the patient with. So if you scroll over here into the diagnosis and order sets, and just like vaccines, if you search vaccines in this diagnose order set, you'll see that there is a PPD right over here. Now I know that PPD is not really a vaccine, but I just put it there just to help you guys remember that it's in the vaccines and all the injectables are in or labeled as vaccines, so bear with me. If I select this once and I click it and scroll down to the assessment and plan, you'll notice that a tuberculosis screening diagnosis was added. There's the assessment and plan, there's the diagnosis code, and the Aplasol injection right over here. Okay, now it's up to the back staff to put the administration quantity, so in this case it'd be 1 milliliters. I put in the appropriate lot number and the expiration date. Internal note is already there, so I don't have to do any of that, and I want to hit this documentation only. Now the documentation only is really important because it ensures that this task doesn't get delegated to anybody else. If we don't select this documentation only, we're basically telling our staff, hey, you need to inject this code to the patient, inject this Aplasol to the patient, and so I'm going to leave it in your inbox just so you know. Well, most of our staff already works in a way in which we give verbal orders, and so we don't really need to add or necessarily communicate using our inbox. So I want a documentation only, And to kind of show an example with the TB, learning about TB educational form, I'll leave this open. Okay? So here's tuberculosis screening, the Aplasol, the educational form, and the PPD. Notice how it's not in with the PPD order or the tuberculosis diagnosis. It's in no diagnosis here. So what I need to do for this PPD order is actually move it up to the tuberculosis screening diagnosis. So notice there's an up arrow. If I press it, it'll move it up into the tuberculosis screening diagnosis. Okay. Same thing with this PPD order. I want to hit documentation only. Once that's all done, I want to sign the order and save it. So once I saved it, you'll see what I mean when I press that documentation only. For the Aplasol, I press documentation only. Notice how the task was assigned to nobody and it's closed. That's what we want. We don't want it to go to anyone else because we're the ones doing it. Same thing with the PPD order, assigned to nobody. The task is closed. But remember, we didn't press documentation only on this learning about tuberculosis, and that got assigned to WCOM staff to notify the patient. That's what happens when you don't select documentations only. We always want to do documentations only because we are the ones actually doing the task and we don't need to delegate it to anybody else. So that's what the documentation only allows us to do. So once I click save again, it will move out of the WCOM staff inbox and get assigned to nobody closed. Okay? So this is how you would order a TB screening. There needs to be a diagnosis with it, the PPD order, the injectable, and this stuff here you can choose to delete it if you want, or you can just put documentation only, depending on education was given in the office. Now when we scroll back up here, remember we did not check mark this, discuss this results closed. We left it open. And because we left it open, this task got assigned to Single Oak staff as a data entry. Now we want that because we haven't received the results yet, so it needs to get assigned to somebody, and for this case all TBs will get assigned to the Single Oak staff for data entry. Okay, now let's say 24 or 48 hours pass and this patient's coming back to get their TB test read. Now when I search this patient, or I go into today's appointment and they're in the appointments, and I click here and I'm in the face sheet, you'll notice on the side here that there is a PPD data entry required. Same thing over here, labs and image, PPD data entry required. Notice how when I want to put the patient's results, I'm not going to make a new order group because this result right over here needs to be tied in with this office visit. This office visit over here. And in order to do that, all I have to do is simply click this and input my results over here. So I can put the observation date and time, which would be today, or let's say it's 2 days from the day that I actually did it, so it would be 2003. And let's put the time, PM. Okay. Order type's already in there, which is right here, so I don't have to do anything. Performing lab, it was in office, so I don't have to do anything. Then on the TB, I can put in whether it was positive or negative. I'll put negative. And the results note, I can either put, whatever I need to do. Let's say we want to put the date in this 10/01/2015, read on 10/03/2015 at 6:38 p.m. Okay. Once I do that, I go to View Actions, Data Entry Complete, then click Save. Okay. Now that it's been reviewed to Dr. Combs, well, I know they don't want to see that in their inbox, and they've already notified the patient that their TB test was negative, or you did. So I go to View Action again, and I would just simply close this just so to make sure it's not in their inbox. Okay? So now that you'll see that the task is assigned to nobody and it's closed. Alright. So once I go back into this patient's face sheet and I have to reload this screen, notice how there's no data entry here. The data is actually in here and we don't have to do anything else. Everything else is in there. If I ever wanted to print it, I would just click it and hit print, and I can give this to the patient for them to give proof that they got a TB test read and that it was negative. So notice here, results note, that's where I did my free texting here. The results is negative and all of the extras. Alright, so that's how you do a TB test. If you have any questions, just let me know.